I made $1 billion from buying and selling businesses, and it changed how I see everything. Imagine this. Over the past 20 years, I've bought, grown, and sold more than 125 businesses. I've seen firsthand what makes some businesses explode in value and why most never get sold. Today, I want to show you the exact steps I use to scale, optimize, and exit businesses so you can see the hidden opportunities others are missing. By the end of this video, you'll understand how to turn a struggling business into a money-making machine and why timing, leadership, and systems are everything. If there's one thing I might be known for throughout my career, it's buying businesses, scaling them up, and eventually selling them. So today, instead of talking about theory, I want to share a few practical insights on how you can buy a business, grow a business, or exit a business the smart way. Over the years, I've personally been involved in more than 125 business exits, and that number is still growing. Right now, we operate 27 companies, and at this very moment, 2 or 3 of them are already positioned for a potential sale. The reason I want to get tactical today is simple. There is an enormous opportunity happening right now, and most people don't fully see it. Over the next 7 to 10 years, somewhere between 3 million and 15 million baby boomers will step away from their businesses. Let that sink in. More than 12 million baby boomers currently own small to mid-sized companies. That means we are about to witness a massive shift in ownership and leadership. This is not just a trend. This is one of the largest wealth transfers in modern history. Here's what that looks like in the real world. Someone walks in and says, "Hi, I see your business is for sale. I'd like to make you an offer. Instead of paying everything in cash up front, I'll invest enough to operate your practice or office, and in return, I'll pay you consistent income over time until you've received a total of $1 million. The business owner thinks it through and realizes this option actually protects their legacy. It helps them avoid a massive tax hit that would come from selling the business all at once for cash. They also see the energy and motivation of the new owner and decide this is the simplest and smartest path forward. This is how many businesses are sold today. Not through traditional bank loans, not through SBA financing, and often not with full cash payments. Instead, they're sold through owner financing. Why? Because fewer than 1 or 2% of listed businesses ever actually sell. So when a business sits on the market too long, the owner becomes frustrated, tired, and uncertain about what to do next. And this is happening everywhere. This massive transfer of wealth is unfolding exactly like this. There are many ways to buy a business. SBA loans, equipment financing, creative structures. But the reality is clear. This is how deals are being done today. And if you're not paying attention, you're missing one of the biggest gold rushes of our time. So now you own the business. What happens next? Every business stands on 5 core pillars. And this is exactly where the real work begins. Pillar 1, leadership. Where are we going? What is the purpose of this company? And what does the final destination actually look like? Pillar 2, operations. How does this business function on a day-to-day level? Do we have systems in place? Can those systems be repeated and scaled? Are we training our team to handle multiple roles instead of just one? Pillar 3, people. You must clearly understand the strength of your workforce. Are the people you've inherited worth keeping? Can they grow alongside the company? If you've got a 75-year-old dentist in the chair, do you also have a 75-year-old front desk assistant who doesn't really plan on staying long-term? This is why understanding personnel matters deeply. Pillar 4, finance. At its core, this comes down to one question. Do you truly understand your numbers? And finally, we group sales and marketing into the 5th pillar. When you understand these 5 pillars, you start seeing the cracks inside the business, and every business has gaps within these areas. That's exactly where your focus should go. What I do is use something called fractional leadership. These are highly trained, part-time executives who are ready to step in immediately under our Empire Advisory brand. We have fractional COOs, Chief Operating Officers. We have access to fractional CFOs, Chief Financial Officers. We bring in fractional CIOs, Chief Information Officers, and we use fractional CROs, Chief Revenue Officers. I look at a business and say, fundamentally, these are the gaps I'm dealing with. The biggest question in any company is simple. How much revenue can this business realistically generate, and can it sustain itself financially? Most of the time, I find weaknesses across one or more of these 5 pillars. The typical solution is to hire someone full-time to fix the problem. But here's the issue. I want a top-tier performer. I want a rock star. I just don't want to pay $250,000 a year to get one. So instead, I tap a fractional executive and say, hey, I need you inside this business for the next 3 to 6 months. Now I can afford that cost. In fact, this person often ends up being one of the least expensive team members in the company. But their job is to dramatically increase efficiency, optimize performance, and raise the overall productivity of the business. Once the operational foundation is built, that's when I pour fuel on the fire. This is where fractional Chief Revenue Officers step in and help identify exactly where the real revenue growth opportunities are hiding. Once the foundation is built, I move into the phase of creating what we call enterprise value, the true long-term value of the company itself. That's the ultimate destination. So, how do you know whether to scale this business or prepare to sell it? Let me share the 3 main questions that I get asked every single time I exit a business. Number 1, the financial question. Buyers always ask, what's your EBITDA? In other words, how profitable are you really? They want to see your numbers. If you don't understand your own financial data, if you don't know your profit margins or how much it actually costs to run the operation, you'll end up selling your company based on only 2 things, EBITDA or top-line revenue. That's not ideal. You want to know your numbers better than anyone. Number 2, the system question. Do you actually have an operational system in place? The reason I built our Empire operating system was because during my own exits, private equity firms and investors kept asking, what's the playbook? How does this business run when you're not there? If I didn't hand them that playbook, the step-by-step system, their next question would always be, would you be willing to stay and keep running it yourself? And that's not what you want when you're trying to sell. Number 3, the intellectual property question, IP. What makes your company truly unique? What separates you from the competition? This is why documenting your systems and processes is essential. Not just what you do, but how you do it. What technology supports your business? What data gives you an edge? If you can build or own proprietary technology, you'll get a much higher valuation when you sell. That's because your systems, your methods, and your data become intellectual property. And across all my exits, these 3 things are always the ones investors care about most. If I can check all 3 boxes, strong and consistent profitability, a repeatable operating system, and unique assets or technology that make us stand out, then I know I've built a business that's in the top 2% of companies that actually sell successfully. Because when you have systems, intellectual property, and clean financials, you become extremely attractive to buyers. That's how real wealth is built, by designing a business that people want to buy. My very first business exit was completely unexpected. I was only trying to raise capital when a few corporate giants stepped in behind the scenes and took advantage of me in ways I didn't even understand. At the last moment, they said, by the way, this is how it's going to happen. And it cost me probably $20 to $30 million I could have had personally over the long term. It was a massive lesson. They gave me just 24 hours to make a decision. I was at a disadvantage in every way. I had lost the game. I had no idea what they were playing. I wasn't prepared. The next day, I was driving back to sign some papers, angry and frustrated, when my mother's words came back to me. At every low point, if you can find gratitude in the moment, that moment becomes a catalyst for your greatest life lessons. I started thinking, how can I see the positive side of what just happened? And suddenly, I realized they were actually giving me something valuable. In the business world, in company exits, this is called a 7 times evident multiplier. In other words, if I did the same work, the same hours for the next 7 years and nothing changed in revenue, essentially, they were giving me 7 years of my life back, right at that moment. Maybe I wanted 10 or 20 years, but they were giving me 7. And on that drive, after one of the worst days of my career, I reached a moment of gratitude. I thought, what if I lived my life today as if I were going to live for the next 7 years on this same income? What would that life look like? I started thinking, who actually gets this kind of blessing in life? And right then, it became the catalyst for my business mantra. How can I compress time? Instead of trying to live 100 lives and dying with the expectation of making it up later, what if I could live 100 lives today? Compress time, multiply outcomes exponentially, without having to go step by step through the entire process, sell something, and use that capital to do something extraordinary. Capitalism, when practiced the right way, provides a tremendous service to society. It essentially says, let the best product or service win, at the right quality and price. This is the part of capitalism I love most, because at this point, it truly serves the consumer. My businesses exist to make money, but they also need a philanthropic mindset to serve customers meaningfully and to have an impact beyond the business itself. From my perspective, this is where capitalism in its purest form creates the greatest good. In every business, there are 5 stages. Startup, the initial phase. Perseverance, the phase before profitability, where we often wear multiple hats and lack sufficient staff. Viability, where the business stabilizes and becomes ready for growth. Scale, scaling the business systematically. Succession, planning leadership transitions. I have a completely systematic method to guide businesses consciously and intentionally through each stage. This is exactly where most small business owners struggle. For example, someone running a small tech company, a dry cleaner, or any small business might reach the perseverance stage. They make some profit here and there, maybe profitable 1 month, not the next, or profitable for 6 months and then not. The problem is they often don't have the right people in the right roles, the proper systems, or a clear path to scale. What they do instead is spend all their revenue in areas they shouldn't invest in long before the business reaches true viability. And that's a mistake because they don't understand the correct growth sequence. What I've learned is there is a specific sequence for growing a business, and it really doesn't matter what kind of business it is. If I can grow the business correctly, hire the right people, implement the right governance layers, and track the right KPIs at the right time, I can move it through these stages much faster than almost anyone else. I've mastered this process completely, and that's why we can grow, operate, scale, and eventually exit these businesses successfully.
Money and resources, money specifically, but really any resource, are the ultimate revealers of what's inside us. Most people just have their usual voice. Some people have a megaphone. Money and resources act like an amplifier, showing the world who we truly are. I remember when I earned my first substantial income, I thought deeply, who do I want to be? Yes, I could live well and raise my standard of living, but ultimately, I wanted to make sure it wasn't just serving me. That's why I think money is the ultimate revealer. When people pursue money out of greed, all you see is more greed, more exploitation, more shortcuts. Take someone like Elon Musk, for example. His goal isn't just to change how we move on Earth, but to transform the entire planetary system. The more money he acquires, the clearer his true intent becomes. He wants to fundamentally change how everything moves: cars, rockets, trains. If Elon were poor, he might have the same dreams, but it's wealth that shows the real scope of who he is. Looking back at my own life, I was lucky to have extraordinary parents. Both were entrepreneurs. Both started successful businesses. I learned so much from them about something like a life operating system. I had a head start in life. It wasn't formal education that brought me here. It was life lessons and a few simple principles that were huge for me. My father understood fear and had a healthy relationship with it. He left his corporate job to pursue his dream. Sometimes he succeeded. Sometimes we were very poor. Sometimes wealthy. I saw it all. I learned that fear of losing isn't the real thing to fear. Within losses often lie our greatest opportunities. Some of my best moments with my father were during our lowest financial points. The second lesson: ego is the enemy. My father led quietly, without showmanship. He never needed to promote himself publicly. He led from behind, willing to work, calm but effective. The third lesson from my mother: gratitude. She consistently brought me back to a place of appreciation, even amidst loss. When I lost my sister and later my brother, she would guide me. Talk about your favorite moments with them, the games, the toys, the memories. She taught me that even in the deepest grief, gratitude can be practiced. Some of the greatest lessons I've learned in life: fear what truly matters, consciously. Ego is the enemy. And in low moments, finding gratitude transforms them into catalysts for massive growth.